For those of you that know him, you love him. His name is Jason Gesing. He's the CEO of eXp Realty. For those of you that have never heard Jason speak, he's brilliant. He's experienced. He's got great stories, great knowledge. He does a great job of leading our company as the CEO. But to me, most importantly, what shines through when you hear Jason, when you talk to him, is his kindness and his heart and how he has a mind for helping others, supporting others. He's a champion. He's an advocate. Jason Gesing, good morning and welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me here, Curtis. And hey, by the way, I approach these things a little bit differently. I like to set low expectations for myself, right, in terms of what people are going to hear. But no pressure. But thank you very much. Happy Friday, everybody. Happy Halloween. And I see some familiar faces here. Suzanne Fuqua, which is awesome. Sam. So really appreciate everybody taking some time this morning. And Curtis, it's been great to sit in on these sessions over the I guess we're many months now that you've been doing these, really ever since I think March or April, and they've just been really enjoyable. So I hope I can deliver in a way that reflects well on what you've been able to do and what you're doing here. So
Jason, thank you. Appreciate it. Sure has been since March, and it's been a great experience, great ride, and so many folks have participated and supported. And again, we appreciate you being here. So we'll jump right in, Jason. We've got about 26 minutes on the clock. In terms of, connecting with these folks and sharing a little bit that they may not all know about your background and experience, will you tell us your before EXP story and why EXP?
Yeah, sure. So, hey, Lou Ronan. First, before EXP. So, I guess it's probably important to know that I was raised just by my mother. I grew up in a city north of Boston called Lawrence, Massachusetts. And if you look at Lawrence today, you won't struggle to find headlines that talk about, sort of the depressed economy there, the racial strife that exists between Spanish-speaking residents of Lawrence and white residents, the folks that have been there for a long time. So I had a very modest upbringing, and my mother, God love her, I never met my dad, but my mother was really committed to education. It was the most important thing in her view. That I get a good education. The Lawrence school system did not have a good education opportunity for me in her view. And so as a nurse, she would work hours, evenings, extra shifts, weekends, right up to the time that she hit like 70. And so much of it really was either to put me through school at places that were not inexpensive in combination with some student loans, or after the fact, she had to recover from that type of sacrifice, and so she worked later than she probably needed to, but made all the difference in the world for me. And so on a daily basis, I went to an elementary school called Pike, and it's in Andover, Massachusetts. And some of you may be familiar with Andover because Andover has a preparatory school there that has that boasts as alumni who are presidents and other things. And in Lawrence, I never lived in a house that didn't have at least 3 families in it. And, we were stacked on top of one another. So it was, the way I describe this, I'm probably making it sound woeful, but it was an incredible childhood. It was really amazing. Wherever I was, I always had people that were upstairs. There were kids downstairs. You get outside at 8 o'clock in the morning, you come home at 8 o'clock at night. You'd take whatever white powder you could find and you'd make lines for baseball or wiffle ball in the backyard. You'd freeze the backyard and put skates on, even though you had like a big pole sticking up in the middle for laundry, and bump your head a couple of times. But it was just a really great childhood. And I think about my kids today. I have 2 sons, 14 and 12, and of course, COVID just adds a whole different dimension. But it's interesting to see how the grass isn't always greener, right? We live in a place with more space now. We don't have other families that share the dwelling with us. But at the same time, I think there's something lost when you don't have people that are literally within, 10 feet of us. I can remember sitting in my bedroom growing up, and I could have the window open, and the house next door to me had their window open, and I could hear the conversation among 12 people in the house next door. And it was great. It just made me feel like I always was around people. And I think I'm a 99I. I need to be around people. So before EXP professionally, I'll fast forward a little bit because I could take up 26 minutes probably just talking about this. But before EXP, I had some great jobs. I worked on an asphalt truck. I worked on a cement truck. I ran a jackhammer. I was a mailman for a little while. I was a garbage man for a little while. Lawrence had those old cast iron tubs with syringes and all sorts of smelly stuff. So it was really good. When I got out of college, I was fortunate enough to get a job at the state attorney general's office, and I was driving the guy around, and he ended up running for governor, and that was really an interesting thing. It really opened up for me that I really loved work if I liked what I was doing, because I was working about 16 or 18-hour days there with him, but it was a great experience, and it went by in a blink. And EXP is kind of the same way. But I think that experience, as well as I was in a relationship at the time with a woman who was applying to law school, took the LSAT, and I thought that we would be able to spend more time together if I studied with her and sent some applications in too. We applied to different schools. She got into hers, I got into mine, and the next thing you know, I was sitting there about 2 weeks into the first semester. I had a stack of books that was about 12 feet high, and we broke up, and I was left wondering, why in the world did I do this? So I got out of law school, worked at a law firm for the better part of 10 years. It was all transactional. It was commercial real estate, a lot of public construction, labor and employment, real estate deals, both on the residential, commercial side, commercial leasing, land use, hearings before zoning boards of appeals. Really pretty diverse, expert in nothing, but knew a little bit about everything, enough to be dangerous. But what for me, it wasn't enjoyable. And my wife will tell you that I used to walk around the office building with a racquetball in my hand, and I would short hop the ball against the wall, and I catch it with the one hand, and I had the phone up against the other, and I say, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. And at the same time, not to go back, but in 2002, when I was admitted to the bar, I also obtained my real estate broker's license for Massachusetts. Would go on to get one in New Hampshire and Maine as well. Always loved the business, and did end up being an agent for a number of years. At times it was part-time. At times I was a bit more serious about it. I sold some businesses with inventory. I sold some commercial buildings and of course houses. And I just loved it. I mean, I love the energy that agents bring to the closing table. I love the fact that they bring one piece of paper, or at least did back then, and it was a invoice for their commission. And they were always, when I was the lawyer at the table, they were making about 5 times as much as I was. And I had this whole stack of paper, and this had to be notarized, and that had to go to the window. Anyway, I'm going on and on. What led me to EXP was in the course of being an agent, I was introduced to somebody who happened to be on a webinar, something called the Real Estate Tomato. And right before he presented, Glenn presented. And so I was introduced indirectly, and so my first interaction with Glenn was to come into our initial campus. Was built on a clunky platform that Suzanne certainly remembers, called OpenQuack, and it just, when I was living a life, Curtis, where I wasn't seeing my kids because I was driving in and out of Boston every day, and typically that's going to take you an hour and a half each way. And as somebody who never met their dad, I did not want to be the dad who would not see their kids for days on end because they were going to bed at 7. So something had to change. And when I met Glenn, and when I understood why he was doing what he was doing, I mean, at first I'll admit this was crazy, right? This video game thing, the avatars. I didn't, I think I even said to somebody who was doing it with me back in 2010, I said, look, you go in there, Evan, you can go in the world. I'm going to just try and, help grow and all this. But then the exact opposite happened, because we started doing, Friday morning leadership meetings like the one we're about to have, except there were 5 people around the table. And it was one of those startup environments where whatever you could do to add value, you would do. And so I was sort of the guy that had like the grammar and English and writing background a little bit. And so I could help with website copy. I had enough legal background that I could get us into states that we weren't in. But this whole idea that if you cut out costs that weren't really providing much benefit to you as a service professional, then you could really change the game when it came to compensation and as well as quality of life. That made all the sense in the world to me, because that was the life I was living. And so I really understood the model. And I really have believed from the first time I ever met Glenn and really got a grasp of what the model was, that we were going to succeed wildly. Sometimes people say, did you ever imagine that you'd be at 36,000 agents today across 50 states, Australia, the UK, South Africa? And I say, yeah, I really did. And so I guess the whole journey was a process of self-discovery, because prior to EXP, I don't think I knew that if I really believed in something and I was passionate about it, that I could be out and be a great advocate for it. And that's what EXP has taught me. And I'm as excited about it today as I've ever been. And just so fortunate to have an opportunity. And I think everybody should, in some point in their life, and everybody here does, should have an opportunity to have somebody come up to you and say, boy, you really changed my life because you made me aware of this. And now I don't have to worry about my disabled kid. Right now, I don't have to worry about whether I'm going to be homeless again. And there's just so many great stories. I had one of the gentlemen that helped us get into South Africa tracked me down in the main office probably 10 days ago. And at that point, we were on the verge of launching, and he knew that, and he was instrumental in it, and he wanted it to happen for a long time. We had first started talking last September, I think, 2 Septembers ago, and he just came up to me, and he effectively, you could hear the sort of the wobbliness in his voice. You know, he was very, very emotional because he knew that this was going to change his life, but also allow him to reestablish roots with his home country and provide opportunity there too. That's a long answer, Curtis. I'm sorry.
Jason, you shouldn't be sorry. I have to say thank you. I know you often are very humble and as you joked, you like to set the bar low. But I just think for everybody in the audience listening, you know, your story means something a little bit different to each and every person, right? There's stories of triumphs early on. There's stories of, you know, parents' love. There's stories of, you know, trying to be the best, continuing to push and pursue. I mean, there's so many valuable lessons in there. And then I think the audience, at least our, you know, eXp Realty staff and agent audience, probably like me, love hearing about the early days. You know, that stuff is really fun to hear. And, you know, I think if there's one thing that stands out, Jason, from that story, and I think for folks who know you and have experienced, you know, what you give, I think we all feel that, you know, one of the biggest things that you do is advocate for others and champion causes and people and, you know, try to lift others up. And I've often said that, you know, we can feel your heartbeat as a company and we appreciate it. And, you know, that's kind of the topic of the next question I want to ask you. And, you know, you can go any direction you want from here. As we were preparing, you know, you shared a number of sort of examples and things you were proud of. And, you know, you went personal a little bit. There's obviously some professional stories around this, especially this year in 2020 and all the things that have gone on in our country. So I'd love to let you talk a little bit to our audience. If they're in a position right now, or maybe haven't realized they're in a position where you can stand up for others, you can take a stand, you can lift others up, you can help people, you can give, you can be that advocate. Because you've been doing this for so long, I think it's one of your top skill sets is listening, supporting, and then championing and advocating for others. Talk to us a little bit about your thoughts, how you do it, maybe what you've taught others. What does it take to stand up for others?
Well, first of all, I'll say that, you know, Glenn taught me early on, and David Gagnon, I'll say too, also taught me this. You know, there's so many things you learn when you really get into this industry first time. There's a whole different lexicon, and people are teaching you some really great and inspirational stuff, which does not happen in the law, by the way. Nobody focuses on personal development, right, in the law. I mean, far from it. But one of the things that they taught me was that, you know, giver's gain, this whole idea of giver's gain, which I had not heard before. But I think naturally I sort of approached the early days of EXP in that vein. And, you know, some examples I would put, you know, I remember I brought in the first broker in the state of Kentucky, and, you know, would put her under somebody else, or believing that if I put somebody under somebody else and kept doing that, you know, and just forgot about frontline for a second, but I just kept putting people under other people, there was going to be a lot of stability in the organization. So I would do that. I think, you know, this idea of standing up for others probably goes back to school, because as I shared with you yesterday, Curtis, I mean, I was the poorest person in my school, and there wasn't even any question about it. I mean, it was a place where everybody got dropped off in the morning, and, you know, we'd come bombing in behind the Mercedes and you know, the really nice cars, and we'd come bombing in with our yellow 1976 Chevy Nova, and it would be all rusted, and, you know, the heat wouldn't work, and the muffler would be making noise, and you know, and I'd get out of the car, and the headmaster would be there to greet the students, and he had these like pants on them, and the pants had whales on them, and I'd say to my mother, you know, what is that? And she'd say, I don't know what the whales are doing on the pants. But so I would say that there were people in that school who looked down on me because of our economic status. And for the most part, it didn't happen, but there were people, and you remembered it. And then I think too, one of the things that happened when I got towards 8th or 9th grade, I can remember, and it's funny what you remember and you'll never forget, but I had an opportunity to stand up for somebody, and I failed. And it was in a group setting. There was a girl who was being bullied in a classroom when the teacher was out of the room. And it was one of those things where everybody sort of just sat around and didn't say something. They just didn't say something, because to say something, it really takes conviction, right? It takes courage. It takes, the ability and the willingness to lose something, even if that's, losing a friend in the form of a bully, whether it's, losing the respect of people who share a different opinion of you. I will never stop regretting that I didn't stand up for that girl who's a woman today. And so, one of the things I've really tried to focus on with my children is that, and they've had their own challenges, but, to kids who have disabilities, kids who have less money, people who, different races or ethnicities, or who are delayed in their speech, or, who need assistance to walk. I mean, it's just, I guess what I'm proudest of is, a couple of years ago, my son went to a school that was outside of the district just because he wanted to try it. It was a great school, not terribly unlike Pike, actually, to be honest. And small class sizes. There were about 14 students. This was the year before, I guess, 2018. And he was about 4 or 5 months into the school year, so probably January. So he was fully invested. He had already made the separation from his friends and his classmates. And he said that, he had to get out of there because there was a girl that was being bullied by basically the entire class. And when you got 14 or 20 people 14 in your class and 26 in your grade, you can't really escape that type of thing. And he reported it. So he had the courage to say something. He had the courage to try and help. And then he ultimately left the school because the school wasn't responsive enough. But I think, standing up for others really requires, a willingness to be uncomfortable. And to know that, in doing the right thing, it probably comes with a cost. And, we see it today. There are agents in the company who stand up for other agents all the time. There are agents who stand up for agents who have been mistreated by other agents at EXP, as sad as that is to say. So, obviously we had to do a staff reduction back in March or April. And that required all of our staff to really step in and stand up for their peers, because there was, as we all know, the work actually did not slow down terribly, and it didn't slow down for very long. And so we had staff that were really stretched, and we have staff that are stretched today. Everybody who works for EXP is stretched, but we all love, what it is that we do. But there's another example. There are countless examples, and I will say, Curtis, our conversation yesterday was really wonderful, because I think it's kind of pointing me in a direction thematically, with respect to EXPCon and my segment on the 9th of November on Monday to sort of kick it off. And so I'd say to anybody in the audience, if you've got a story about standing up for something, or for people, or for principle, that you want to share with me, if you had an experience at EXP where you've seen somebody else stand up for what's right, please let me know. I'd love to hear about it.
Woo. I love it. Sometimes I get so caught up listening, Jason, and just I'm moved by the stories, by the openness, your willingness to share. And I mean, I think I've also, like you, and like everybody in this room, I would imagine this year has been very much a year of maybe new self-discovery, maybe of reflection, maybe of, facing or thinking about things we haven't historically had to think about or had to face, right, for many of us. And, I love that you described it sort of as a journey. And I, like you, something that you and I have in common is, we think a lot about the lessons that we learn, and we apply them to our children, or we learn from our children, or we reference sort of our children. And I appreciate you sharing that. And I think for, anybody listening out in the audience, just the ideas of, I'm officiating a wedding this evening, Jason, and I was working on and reviewing the ceremony that I drafted up and the things that we were sharing, and just the tried and true principles of respect and kindness and trust, and ability to forgive. Some of the things that we may not think about on a daily basis, but if you have that opportunity, and today you might have called out, I think, to anybody listening, chance to be a little bit more aware and look for those opportunities to stand up for others, and to stand up for what you believe in, and to, become a little bit more clear about your conviction, your beliefs, your values. It's an amazing time to do it. And again, I just have to say that this organization, this company, there are so many groups and communities and tribes and people that are empowered, that are standing up for others. And if you're sitting here in the audience today and you haven't explored those options, you haven't yet sought out community, I'd like to encourage you to do so. And Jason, I know we're going off script here just a little bit, but in terms of the communities and what you see developing at EXP, you know, you've been around for a long time. You talked about the 5-person Friday agent leadership meeting as opposed to the 400 or 500-person Friday agent leadership meetings now. Talk a little bit about what you see emerging and things that you're excited about in terms of the communities, you know, the people, the respect, the core values you see exhibited at the company. Give a little bit of insight there, because I know you participate and champion so many groups and so many agents, you know, across the company have collaborated with you. Talk a little bit about the communities and things you're proud of there.
Yeah, I mean, it's really strange, right? I mean, the community aspect of EXP is for me, there's two reasons why we've succeeded, Curtis. The first is that we've been able to build a community without the costs that are typically associated with building a community. And I see Jeff Rubenstein just came in, you know, so there's another person that I know and I've had interactions with and I respect very much, and who's just always there to help, right? Always there to contribute. There are just, I think people are standing up when they say, you know, Jason, as we get bigger, it's harder and harder to find my tribes. And so I think this idea of agent ownership really prompts all of us to stand up for the company too, and to let us know every time you fill out a net promoter survey, you're standing up a little bit, you're stepping up, and you're making the company better. And you may tell us that, you know, SkySlope sucks, right? Or you may tell us that every one of these classes taught by Curtis, you know, are wonderful, but the ones that, you know, you're on, Jason, they're a waste of time. I mean, there are things that are going to be, you know, difficult to say, but that need to be shared so that we know that we have room to get better, and there are things that we need to do to get better. But I think with respect to this is the hardest thing to describe to somebody outside of the company. You can show them a picture, you can even play that 2-minute video with the avatar running up the lighthouse with the music, but it just doesn't capture it. And I think for me, when the first time, actually it was a leadership meeting, it was a Friday leadership meeting probably back in 2014 or 15. And I can remember that in that platform, you could fly. Now somebody's told me you can fly here. I don't know how to do it, but you could fly very easily in the last platform. And we used to be in this circular auditorium that, you know, maybe could hold 100 people. And one day we had the meeting and we discovered it. I think, yeah, and Brad remembers this. And all of a sudden, everybody in the meeting at the same time started to hit the fly button. And I remember standing up there on the stage, and Joe Schumer out of New Mexico comes flying in. He almost hits me. And it just, you know, there are things that happen here, whether it's a boat ride or a soccer match or, you know, what is effectively a therapy session, that it goes on all the time here. And I think, you know, I think if you look at what's happened in 2020 for us as a company, I mean, international certainly is one of the things that stands out foremost. And what I've always loved about that, I've always been excited about the international aspect of this. And it's not because we can grow more, right? It's not because we can get into more markets. It's not because more people are going to know the EXP name. It's because we get to add more people to a community in a way that other companies simply can't do. And, you know, we're seeing it now. We're going to be in France, so we're going to have people speaking French. We're seeing it now with Mexico. We're going to have people that are speaking Spanish, even more than we've had. And, you know, it won't be long before we've got all of these different languages that are being spoken here by people that are all across the globe, and they all come to the table with different backgrounds and experiences. And there's just such a richness there. There's a richness in terms of who they are as people. There's a richness in terms of their professional experience. And you bring all that together, and if you can harness it and you can put it in a world like this where people have a destination and everybody's a fellow owner, it's really powerful. And I'm a big diversity guy. I'm a really big diversity guy. And, you know, if I can just be open and transparent, the dialogue today, whatever your political beliefs are, this is not a political statement at all, but the dialogue and the toxicity of it, and the mean-spiritedness of it, it sickens me, and it's unnecessary. And so I look forward to hopefully that getting better. And saying that probably has taken me off my train of thought. So
no, well, I'm gonna pull you back to the thought that really left me, you know, grateful for this conversation, Jason. And again, just grateful for your leadership and the role that you play and how you contribute to our agents. You know, just you talking about the diverse set of experiences, beliefs, opportunities, what it takes and what has made this company great, this opportunity great, and so many people in here giving And you being that real diversity champion, I can tell you is felt, as a half Hispanic, half Caucasian boy growing up in South Texas in a trailer park in Laredo. I never thought I'd be in a place where we were growing like this and impacting people and doing all the things that we're doing. And you talked about personal development, and it's so clear that, again, more than anything, your desire to be the best in helping others and being a champion and being an advocate, it just shines through every day, Jason. And I just want to say thank you. And as we approach the agent leadership meeting starting here in just about 2 minutes, I'm going to give you a final 30 to 60 second thought window here, Jason. If you could make sure that our audience takes away one message today, what is that final message?
You talked about self-reflection at the beginning of this. You gave people some prompts and you said, we're going to take a few minutes to self-reflect. I found at points in my life that I was spending too much time reflecting, right? Was I happy on a day-to-day basis? Today's Tuesday. Am I happy doing what I'm doing? Tomorrow's Wednesday. Am I happy doing what am I doing? Next Friday, am I happy doing what I'm doing? And if I'm not, I'm going to lament over that. So one of the things I really try to do is pick one day a year where you really do sit down and reflect and you say, where am I today in relation to where I want to be? And am I happy? And if you're not, then take action to make sure that you're happy for the next 12 months. But whatever you do, once you make that decision in terms of where you're going to be and what you're going to be focused on for the next 12 months, I mean, obviously, extreme circumstances aside, stick with it and then wait until the next year and then reevaluate, because I think you can really become paralyzed if you're constantly thinking about your own happiness on a daily basis. Strange as that sounds. I didn't say that in the right way. You should always be thinking about your happiness, but professionally, I think you can't constantly be evaluating as to whether or not there's a better place for you. I think it's healthy to do it every once in a while, but not every day.
How about that for the power of conviction? Make a decision, stick to it, push through, and build your next year. Jason, thank you for building 1 year at a time. We appreciate you. Thanks for being part of our Excel session this morning. Wish you a wonderful Friday.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. And thank you, Candace Garcia, for saying that. And I got to tell you, you were phenomenal hosting the leadership meeting. I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but you were just off the charts. So thanks to everybody here.